Thursday, beautiful people. All right, y'all. All right, y'all. We here. Sorry for the extreme tardiness this morning. I went to bed late and I woke up extremely late. And when I woke up, my head was banging. I took something when I woke up, because I haven't had a headache and I don't know how long. I don't know. I think it's because, I don't know. I did a late workout last night, like literally a late workout. I got done almost like midnight. And I was just trying to push myself just a little bit harder because I had all this energy. And then I went and I soaked in the tub with some Epsom salt for about an hour, and I was good. I was laying in there reading my book and everything. Went to bed. I was good. Clock went off at 5 a.m. I hit it. I was like, all right, let me go ahead and get up. I didn't even hit snooze. I was like, all right, let me go ahead and get up. But my head was banging. I went to stretch. And next thing I know, I was waking up a little bit over an hour later. I'm like, oh my gosh. And my head was banging. So forgive me if I'm moving a little bit slow still. I was hoping it would have had kicked in by now. It did a little bit. It subsided a little bit, but I'm like, all right, let me just go ahead and get it done. I think I'm gonna go. I don't know. I got a few minutes to play with today. I might lay down. Hopefully by the time I get done with this today, I'll be good and I can just keep on moving with my day. But anyway, happy Thursday, beautiful people. The Nat, Jamia, Dawn, Shebrew, Avia, Elijah, Set Apart, Bronze Joe Report, Hannah, Global Purpose, and everybody else hanging out in the background. Top of the morning to you. Today, y'all, it is Thursday, December the 8th, 2022, day 283 of year 4, reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1303. Today, we picking back up in Oahspe in the book of Oahspe, Son of Jehovah, on page 80, chapter 16. And when we get done here, we're going to hop back into chapter 7, I believe it's chapter 7, of the Field Guide to the Spirit World on page 169. All right, y'all. Father, we thank you that your intelligence is the light of our souls. All right, Derry CM, shalom, shalom. You're welcome, fam. I feel like I'm missing something if I don't get up and do it. For a second, when I woke back up, I'm like, wait a minute. That my head was banging. I'm like, wait, is it the Sabbath? I'm like, why am I still laying in the bed? Then I remember, I was like, holy crap. The clock did go off at 5 and I was stretching. How did I fall back to sleep? I didn't know I fell back to sleep and my head was banging. Like I wanted to cry. That's how bad my head was hurting. I'm like, what in the world could have happened? What did I eat? I worked out late, soaked in the tub. I was like, I should not have a banging headache this morning like this. Okay. But anyway, let's just go ahead, create a gang, shalom. All right, y'all, chapter 16. Nearer and nearer came the visiting stars, the Etherian ships from thousands of worlds, with countless millions of emancipated souls, dwellers in the Nirvanian regions of Jehovah. And when they reached the boundaries of the earth's vortex, they halted a while to form in rank, that their glory might add to one another. And while they stood thus in the great vault of heaven, there opened on one side a gate amidst the stars, and far beyond came a strange and mottled sun swaying to and fro. And this was the great fields and forests of Huatan, letting loose the thousands of millions of the delivered earth. God and his host saw it, and every soul burst forth one universal shout of applause. It was coming straight to Horrid, and as it came nearer, the curtains and sails and streamers, made of yellow, blue, and red fire, began to wave and surge like a ship in a rough sea, but steadily holding course in the undulating elements. Presently could be seen guardian ships, thousands and thousands, traveling beside the laboring sun, the host of Huatan. And the guardian ships were themselves like stars and carried millions of Etherian souls who had been gods and goddesses on many worlds, and they formed wings for the Huatan avalanche to hold steady the course to the red star, the earth of mortals. And thus, in horrid discipline, came the fleet of Jehovah's worshippers, who only 200 years since were but as vermin delving into darkness and deep buried in death as their only knowledge, to whom great Jehovah and his exalted worlds were unknown. Wow, let me read the whole verse again. Verse 3, page 80. And the guardian ships were themselves like stars and carried millions of Etherian souls who had been gods and goddesses on many worlds, and they formed wings for the Huatan avalanche to hold steady the course to the red star, the earth of mortals. And thus, in honored discipline, came the fleet of Jehovah's worshippers, who only 200 years since were but as vermin delving into darkness and deep buried in death as their only knowledge, to whom great Jehovah and his exalted worlds were unknown. Brighter and brighter grew that great waving sun, sailed by the immortal gods, and larger and more imposing, till when it entered, till when it entered the earth's vortex, it became as a living fire, large as the earth, and of brilliant colors, from black to adamant, and blue and white, and purple and yellow, scarlet, pink, and of all shades, and living and sparkling, with the broad curtains suspended deep as the breath of a whirl, and sails and flags that reach upward high as the moon. Midway in the vortex of the earth, it halted, and the myriads of stars beyond now, hold on, midway in the vortex of the earth, it halted, and the myriads of stars beyond now gathered in majestically from every side, till nearly around about the fabric of the earth's atmosphere was not a place but glowed with Jehovah's fire of heaven. Music which rose from the throne of God a little while before now ceased, for here was the play of elements in harmony, of which music is the same to the ear of mortals. Hardly stood the kaleidoscope of splendors in one attitude, but moving, changing, and forming by the decrees of the gods and goddesses, as a general on earth manipulates his armies in the evolution of arms, so in majesty and splendor the marshalling stars forever evolve new and glorious changes, stretching abroad over the whole firmament of heaven. And now another gateway opened amidst the stars, and a cluster star was seen approaching from the southeast. It was as a star surrounded by stars, and brighter than all the others. This was the starship of Aph, the Orion chief, at sight of which all souls in the firmament turned in pride and wonder. Swift and mighty above all the countless millions of gods and goddesses assembled. Hold on, let me start it over. Okay. Swift and mighty above all the countless millions of gods and goddesses assembled, had he attained in the play and management of worlds. And at sight of his Etherian star, angels and gods whispered, Off! And the magic of his name, widely known in the Nirvanian fields of the emancipated heavens, spread abroad till every soul uttered, Off! In all the regions of atmosphere and on the earth. Nearer and nearer he came, nor halted at Chinvant, the boundary of the earth's vortex, but steadily and with power sailed on till his star stood in the doorway of heaven, and here halted as if to complete the immortal scene. But a moment more, and all the avalanche of the glorious worlds around moved onward toward the earth, and surrounding it on every side, and the star of Off making headway for Horrid, even to the throne of God. This was the morning of the third day and tide of Dan, in which there were still 4 days left. But now the marshals took their parts. First, Suji, chief over all the rest, from the throne of God, cried out, All hail, O Aph, son of Jehovah. And the words were caught up on every side and uttered in one breath around the world. Yet nearer and nearer gathered in the great starships and son of Huatan, so even like a net, they joined and filled the earth's atmosphere in the east and west and north and south, and below and above on every side. And the words of the marshal, All hail, O Aph, son of Jehovah, went like an echo over all the heavens. Then Aph's fleet drew near, and he and his hosts alighted, and he ascended the throne, saluting, saying, All hail, O Neph, God of heaven and earth. And this was also uttered by the millions of hosts. whereupon the signs and ceremonies of the gods were briefly concluded, and a recreation of 3 days proclaimed. And the angels' hosts came forth out of their ships, or by the endless chain, sped to any quarter of the earth they desired to visit. And for 3 days and nights, the visitors dwelt on the earth and in the lower atmosphere, expecting how the earth was made, its land and water, its mountains and valleys, its beasts of prey and beasts of burden, its birds and fish, and above all, its mortal people and spirits who lingered about the earth, the great storytellers who knew no higher heaven. And then they surveyed atmosphere and the works of God and his lords, their nurseries, hospitals, factories, schools, and colleges. And on the fourth day, the marshals called order, and so great was the discipline of the host that the arrangement of the starships hold on, let me read that over. And on the fourth day, the marshals called order, and so great was the discipline of the host and the arrangement of the starships that in a moment of time, order reigned amongst all these countless millions of people. Now, during the recreation, the chiefs from many worlds and gods and goddesses mingled together and exchanged their varied experience in the wide regions of Jehovah's universe, of the management of both corporal and Elysian worlds, and of the cosmogony of Etherian planets, and the surveying of roadways, and of turning worlds from their orbited course, or changing their axic rotation, and of the deliverance of millions of souls into the Geayan field, and of the creation of new corporal worlds, and the dissolution of others, and the gathering together of the spirits disinherited and of their final resurrection. Neither seemed there any end to Jehovah's universe where such wonders go onward forever. When order was restored, God commanded Waka to rise to be anointed, and God said, "In thy name, O Jehovah, I anoint this thy son, God of heaven and earth, for the next 400 years. Guide him in wisdom and love, O Father." And God gathered from the abundance of the ethic, I'm sorry. And God gathered from the abundance of ethic and made a crown and placed it on Waka's head, saying, "Hail, God of heaven and earth, Jehovah's son." This was shouted by the host. And then God took off the triangle, the samgan, the heirloom of the gods of the red star, the earth, and hung it on Waka's neck, saying, "Take this heirloom, the symbol of 3 entities in one, and wear it for the glory of the great spirit Jehovah." I don't know why I just thought about Waka Flocka. I was like, I wonder where he got his name from. I wonder if he read Oahspe. I don't know. Read it again. Verse 15. I feel the headache lifting a little bit more. I feel like I want to joke a little bit. Okay. I'm going to read verse 15 again. And God gathered from the abundance of ethic and made a crown and placed it on Waka's head, saying, Hail, God of heaven and earth, Jehovah's son." This was shouted by the host. And then God took off the triangle, the samgan, the heirloom of the gods of the red star, the earth, and hung it on Waka's neck, saying, "Take this heirloom, the symbol of 3 entities in one, and wear it for the glory of the great spirit Jehovah." To which Waka, now God, answered, "Thy will be done, O Father, creator and ruler over all." And all on the throne stood aside, and God, Waka, ascended the throne and sat in the midst, whereat the Essenos chanted, and the hymn sounded around the whole earth. Then Oph, son of Jehovah, spake, saying, "In 400 years, O God, I will come and deliver thee and thy hosts and thy lords and their harvest for the glory of Jehovah, the unapproachable Almighty." Amen. And now Oph went and sat down at the foot of the throne, whereat God came down according to custom and took his hand, saying, "Arise, O God, son of Jehovah, and go thy way." And Oph rose up, saluting, and he and his attendants, hold on. And Oph rose up, saluting, and he and his attendants departed and entered his starship. The Essenos chanted, The trumpeters played, and the solemn march of Jehovah's sea of fire sounded from heaven and earth. The marshals now put great works in order. Neph and his attendants were stationed on the right of Off in a ship new built. Next to him, the ship of his lords and their attendants. After them, the marshals from the different divisions of the earth and atmosphere. Next to them, the ships of the messengers, then the factors, then the nurses, then the physicians, and so on. And finally, the divisions of earth raised, who were now adjourned to the sun avalanche, being the same rank. And these comprise the harvest of Neph for Jehovah's emancipated realms, and the number of souls exceeded all other harvests raised up from the earth. And now the time for and now had come the time for the ascent. And Ob said, "Give us of thy power, O Jehovah." And his words were echoed in all places in heaven and on earth. The plateaus trembled and oscillated. Again, Ob said, "Of thy power, O Jehovah, arise, O heaven, arise, O heaven." And the plateau of the spheres started from their foundations and slowly moved back and outward from the earth. The Senars played the march. The Etherians tore off strips of fabric and threw them down in Horeb, and then formed flowers and leaves and perfumed them and cast them out to fall in the lower heavens. Outward and outward, the Etherian world moved and moved, and then parted the breadth of the earth, and then rose slowly upward. Presently, it turned on its axis and was yet one entire world, but with its rotation, the different stars began to individualize and separate, all save the harvest of Neph, which was the central figure led onward and upward by Off, son of the Great Spirit. Faster and faster rose the glorious scene, and more awful and sparkling with splendor, nor could one from Horeb scarce look upon the dazzling light, but higher it rose and onward toward its far off destiny till it disappeared in the firmament above. And we're about to read the last chapter, and then we're gonna hop over to the Feel God to the Spirit World. Tabitha, shalom, shalom. Dawn, hold on, I said hey to Dawn earlier, right? BC, shalom, shalom. Nazarene is sing, Grand Rising. Uncle JP, Grand Rising. Tony, Great House, shalom. Nene, shalom, sis. Animalistic Nature, shalom, shalom. He said, put a little bit of baking soda in your glass of water. It'll help hydrate your intestines and your brain, and it should help you feel better. Thank you for that, because I'm thinking I might be a little bit dehydrated, right? Because like I said, I got a mosquito bite. They bit me. I was out there in the garage. It's crazy. I know y'all can see it. I was out there in the garage late last night, and a mosquito bit me right on my face. So I've been scratching it. But yeah, it might be a little bit of dehydration because I didn't have my water bottle in there with me, but I was working out. And like I said, I pushed myself a little bit harder. Like I had all this energy yesterday, and I literally doubled my sets and reps that I was doing, So, I mean, but I wasn't in pain, but I don't know. It could be some dehydration because when I got done, I probably just sipped a little bit of water, and then that was it. So you might be right. Thanks for that. I think that might be what it is. I haven't had a headache in a minute. All right, so let me read chapter 17. But yeah, it's definitely lifting a little bit more. All right. But I got some water before I started. I was like, I don't know what is wrong, but I did drink a lot of water. I took some Motrin, and I ate a piece of fruit. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what in the world, but I think now that you mentioned it, I think that's what it is. Could be dehydration. Where's my water now? I left my big bottle that I normally have with me. It's upstairs. Like I was like, when I say I was hurting, like that headache, I wanted to cry because I used to have migraines a lot, right? Before I removed the meat out of my diet, this felt like a migraine. I don't know, and that shouldn't have happened just from like one workout overworking myself. And then again, it could have, I don't know. But I could have been drinking a little bit more water than I have been the last couple of days. So it's probably the culmination of like a couple of days of not hydrating myself enough. True lack of sleep will give you that too, right? Because sometimes I be playing with my hours of sleep. It's probably a combination of all of it, and it's just catching up with me. So, but yeah, thanks, sis. Okay, let me read this last chapter. Chapter 17, page 82. Now was atmosphere like a new heaven, stripped of visitors and ready to resume labor after a glorious festival. So God at once dispatched all hands to their places, and the factories, schools and colleges, nurseries and hospitals were once more alive with willing workers. And Horeb prospered in every department, and so also did the departments of the lords on earth, and mortals also prosper under the light of the Great Spirit. For 400 years, God reigned in heaven, and his lords under him. And the second Dan of Oth fell upon heaven and earth. So God appointed Anon as his successor, and now Oth and his attendants came to deliver God, his lords and people prepared for their resurrection up into Ethera. And the number of Jehovah's harvest was 1,000 million souls, and God, Anon, reigned his time, and his lords under him, and they were also delivered by Oth, but by proxy, and the harvest of Jehovah was 800 million souls. And his successor, God of Horeb and Atmosphere, and his lords fulfilled their Dan, and they and their harvest were delivered by the proxy of Oth also. And the number of souls delivered was 600 million. And Jehovah commanded Oth to commit Atmosphere and the earth to the successors of Razan of Garowista and Ems of the Etherian phalanx of 80 Ardoth. And the next harvest of God and his lords was 200 million souls. After that, the earth passed into Aji of Urkstan for 800 years, and the light of the upper heaven was lost to the earth and atmosphere, so there was no harvest for the Etherian realms. And because of the darkness and atmosphere, it began to fall in Hada. And the seven entities of Tetrax took root in Horeb and overspread the dominions of God and his lords. And many in heaven rose up and proclaiming themselves gods or lords, obtained followers, some to the extent of 3 million souls. And these false gods made slaves of their followers, exacting service, and in lieu giving pitiful homes and regimen, and by the labor of their slaves embellishing their mansions and cities in Hada. I'm read the whole verse 8 again. And these false gods made slaves of their followers, exacting service, and in lieu giving pitiful homes and regimen, and by the labor of their slaves embellishing their mansions and cities in Hada. Jehovah had said of old, before mortals I keep death forever present, that they may not forget the change from corporal to spirit life. Otherwise, they would dispute it possible in my hands for these things to be. But my resurrections in heaven are far apart, and the inhabitants thereof lose faith in those above them. Through faith is all power and glory attained. Therefore have I exacted that angels cultivate faith in the next resurrection. But during the last 1,000 years in atmosphere, there being no resurrections to Ethera, many fell into disbelief of the emancipated heavens, and so set about building up heavenly kingdoms on their own account and for their own glory. And in order to have exalted kingdoms, they sent their slaves back to mortals to inspire them with the glory of their false gods' kingdoms, that others in turn might become slaves also. So confusion began in heaven again, and it reacted on mortals through the angels' presence, and war and misery overspread the nations and tribes of men on earth. Thus ended the cycle of Oth, being 2,600 years after the flood, and 3,600 years in all. And after in all is reference number 8, and number 8 at the bottom says, thus ended the cycle of Oth's Ark of Noah, being 2,600 years after the flood, and which was 3,600 years in all. And that is the end of the book of Oth, son of Jehovah. So not Friday, we're going to be here Friday, Saturday when we come back. No, wait, hold on. We got to go back. There was a second book, wasn't there? Yes, we got to go back. The Lord's first book. We got to go back to page 59. Okay, so we got to go to 50, and that's really short. Yeah, so that's a few pages. That's from 59 all the way to page 71.
Did you keep the consistency?
Keep the consistency of what?
You going to the gym once every single day?
Yes, Jeremiah.
Filling my P's and Q's?
Yes.
I'm so proud of myself. That's what I do.
I'm very proud of you, son. All right, y'all. Yeah, my head is feeling definitely a little bit better. Okay. All right, y'all. I wonder if these false gods were the so-called Anunnaki. Yes, Creator Gang. Was you here? You may not have been here when we actually read through the Anunnaki Bible. I lost some people. They told me I was blaspheming. I got some crazy messages when I decided I'd read that. I was like, y'all forget what we're doing here, right? I was like, we're gonna separate. We're gonna separate the truth from the error, right? And you will find in a complete, and I'm gonna show it to y'all. Hold on.
Yeah, you tell them that y'all only on the tip of the iceberg right now?
Oh.
I said. Because it wasn't just the Anunnaki, you still got like 50 other people out there.
Okay. So this is the complete Anunnaki Bible that we read. We also actually, before we read this, we read the Lost Book of Enki, right? So we read that, and it was really, really interesting. As when you read through that, the Lost Book of Enki, you will find a lot of stories that you find in the Bible. And the Anunnaki Bible is way older than a Bible. Remember, the Bible is the newest religious book on the block, so to speak. Aside from these little one-offs that they doing, little Bibles that they
basically a spiritual poltergeist.
What?
A spiritual poltergeist, my personal way of putting it.
He said my personal way of putting it. He said it's a spiritual. What?
A lot of on the P's. Just to make
you said the Bible's a spiritual poltergeist.
Yep. There's no getting out of that one.
He said, yeah, no, there's no getting out of that one. Okay, so Jeremiah calls the Bible spiritual poltergeist. But what we found out is you find out the Anunnaki, they talk about ancient Sumer a lot, right? So, but yeah, the Anunnaki, a lot of them were made up, but there are a few characters in there that are true, but they were false gods, right? But in it will blow your mind at how much stuff that you read in the Anunnaki Bible, which is older. It comes from older texts than the Bible that you will find in the Bible. And it also tell you how they created stories that we read in the Bible that we take like this is creation. It tells you in some of the older Sumerian texts how they created this particular text that is now being published and pushed in all the Bibles. Like that like opened my eyes on another whole level. I'm like, wait a minute. So ancient Sumer is older than Babylon too. So I'm thinking, okay, everything was stolen from Babylon, but the stuff that you have in Babylon was stolen from ancient Sumer. So everything goes all the way back. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? So while reading the Lost Book of Enki, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, something ain't right. Something ain't right. Okay, so I started looking, then I came across the complete Anunnaki Bible. And it had more tablets and stuff that we read through that got into details of a lot of stuff that we hear about in the Bible. Some of it is literally almost word for word, and it's repeated in the Bible. And that's what really didn't sit right with my soul, like deep down in my shana, right? I'm like, hold on. So the Bible is simply copying text from other ancient texts, from other religions, just changing the name. And they teach the people, don't go look into nothing. All you need is Jesus. And if you do that, you won't ever find out that they're frauds and that they've taken information from other ancient texts that they thought was like super holy, but they've taken it from other nations and a bunch of created and made up stories. Yeah, so some people they just couldn't understand why we was reading through it. I was like, cause y'all got to see something here, right? We gotta investigate the Bible. Not that everything is false in there, right? Because it's not. There are some true words from Creator that has made it in the Bible, which is why, like the Psalms and Proverbs, really the Psalms is powerful. A lot of them, right? And they will actually push darkness out, right? I found that to be true in some of my spiritual dealings with other entities and at night and stuff. And when I would put on Psalms, it would literally get rid of the darkness and any kind of spiritual attack that I may have been having. It goes away and I could sleep peacefully, right? It literally pushes fear out the door on so many levels, right? So I'm like, I'm not gonna throw my Bible away, all right, because I have a lot of personal experiences happen, and it's only certain books, like I say, and it's only like certain books of the Bible that'll do that, right? But there's also, I found out, and that because it's so powerful that the Psalms are used a lot in a bunch of magic spells. Like people take what's good and they use it for nefarious reasons, taking what's holy and making it perverse to actually create incantations and spells that they can put on people. And when you look at the roots of their spells or whatever, they take it right from the Bible. I'm like, holy crap. Hold on, let me put this back. So, but there is there was a lot of interesting information in there, right? So I learned a lot about ancient Sumer while we were going through the Anunnaki books and stuff, because there was a bunch of videos I used to see. They're not popping up in my newsfeed anymore because I'm not actively researching them like I was before. I think the very first time, and I joked this girl. It was a black girl. I had never really heard anybody black, so to speak. And it's not to be racist towards anybody, but I had never heard anybody black talking about like being taken out of here, like to another planet, talking about the Anunnaki, right? And like she was super hyped, and I'm like, what is this girl talking about? And what is this and I couldn't pronounce it. I was like, how did she say Anunnaki, you know? So I started looking. So I was like, this has got to be a spoof video or something. That's what I was looking at, and I was laughing the whole way through. I was like, no, sis, she got to be a comedian or something, the way she was explaining it. But I actually started looking into it. I'm like, oh shoot, there's like a whole like this is a thing. And so that's why I started being introduced to who the Anunnaki were and everything. And as we got along in our reading, I was like, we've got to read this. And we read through, like I said, the Lost Book of Inky first. Why y'all so loud? Hey, both of y'all, chill.
No, that nigga always lazy. What you talking about?
Look, y'all better figure it out. Y'all, I'm live and y'all fighting over what? Who gonna take the trash out?
I'm trying to hurry up cook before I join class. Trash out.
Y'all, well, if one of y'all would have did it last night, y'all wouldn't be having this conversation this morning. Somebody better figure it out.
Did he take my last time?
I don't know. I don't know.
If it was Fox, then yeah, no.
I don't know, but somebody better figure it out. And I think your brother just left. So
yeah, he did. Don't wait.
Well, you better have hope he come back before they come pick up the trash about noon. Because then y'all both gonna have problems with your daddy. And I'm gonna just get some popcorn. I'm gonna walk through the house like
I'm gonna be chill. I'm okay. Cause I know
come on, shalom. Windows, shalom. Okay, let's go back. Let's go. I didn't even start this yet, did I? Okay, so yeah, that's how the whole Anunnaki thing, we started getting into that.
When did they come?
When did who come?
When do the trash come?
I said about noon. That's when they come. But do it before you join your class. But recycles. Well, I guess you better move a little bit faster because the recycling, they come around about 9, like clockwork. So It ain't gonna take you that long. Just take them, pull them out to the curb. Okay, Tootie, what you doing? No. All right, no. Don't, girl, don't download that. Quit downloading games. I deleted stuff. I need to use it for school. Okay. Yeah, so who's it that asked me that? Was it Creative Game Gang? Yeah, false. Yeah, so they're false gods. Yeah, a lot of them were created, but there is, and I remember the exact names of the actual ones that were real, but they had a big hand in creating a lot of this stuff. Even these flood stories and stuff that were passed down and through the Babylonian Enuma Elish or Elish, however you pronounce it, and then that was taken and then put into the flood story that we have in the Bible, right? But if people don't never study or go past what their pastors tell them, they'll never figure it out, and they wonder why they lack power. So, hit and miss. I'm just saying. Okay, page 169. We'll take a How long is this? Committed. Oh, we jumped ahead and we read this with Kevin's question. Okay, so remember when Kevin asked about, this was quite a few videos ago, but it was in the section where it was going into suicide, and Kevin asked a question, and his question was, matter of fact, I wrote it in here. He asked, that's what it's gonna get into. I don't know that we're gonna finish all that today. I keep everybody question. Well, the ones that I don't answer. Okay, that's Jamil's question. Kevin, he asked, no, that ain't that far away. But he said he wondered if the self-cutting was, hold on. Oh, okay, yeah. I wonder if self-mutilation is trying to dig the evil out. Kevin asked that question November the 14th. And I didn't see the question until after we had ended the video, but when I got a little bit of time, I just kind of started looking into it and I found the answer. And that was on page 172 and 175. And the very next day, we actually read that to answer his question. And we're actually coming back upon that again. We'll probably read that when we read it again Saturday when we come back, because his answer picks up on page 172. So we're gonna probably read till right before that begins and we'll pause. Okay. So page 169. Hold on. Somebody asked another question. Brian Joe reports a good question. No. Okay. Is Jeremiah going back upstairs? I would tell him what you said, but he Tablet said, the brother who brings spunk to the chat. Shout out to you. Oh, what Kevin asked. Okay, Bronjo. Okay. Yeah, it was a good question, right? So it is literally answered in detail about that. And that was good the way Kevin he termed that. He said, I wonder if self-mutilation is trying to dig the evil out, right? And literally it was. And we gave examples about how people who cut themselves, right? They're not necessarily cutting themselves because a spirit is driving them to cut themselves, but in a lot of instances they cut themselves to bring them out of that sunken place that they feel themselves falling into, and the only way they can jolt themselves back to themselves is to do something self-mutilating, because pain brings them back, right? And so this is going to get into that, and it was I used Split as an example of that with Kevin and his mother, so we'll get to it. Okay, page 169, and we ended after the Sam Sagan quote. All right, so it picks back up with anorexia. Anorexia, quote, exacerbates the continuous feeling of emptiness, end quote, so often expressed by obsessives. Almost every analysis of OCD stresses this hollow feeling, this sense of emptiness. Patients are quoting as saying, quote, I feel nothing. I feel like nobody. I feel invisible, end quote. Dr. Stephen Levenkron in Obsessive Compulsive Disorders offers in depth portrayals of numerous OC girls whose downward spiral entails anorexia nervosa. Nina Catherine, Laura, Alice, Diane, and others. This, quote, vacant person, end quote, seen by Levenkron, does not really know why she repeats her bizarre rituals, only that she is driven by, quote, feelings of intense dread, end quote. She has somehow come to believe that her compulsive actions afford her, quote, her whole security system, end quote. Levenkron, 1991, page 59, 36, 62, and 110. It is a nameless dread, quote, inexplicable dread, end quote, is the phrase used by a woman stricken with anorexia, along with migraines, insomnia, racing thoughts, and seizures. Cahalan, 2012, page 22. Yet the very young and guileless might give it a name, as did the 6-year-old girl with a touching and counting compulsion who, during an attack, would run to her mother saying, quote, Mommy, Mommy, my other mind is back, end quote. Yikes. Thus, does Dr. Girdham, 1982, page 59, say the obsessional child is essentially the psychic child whose open aura has attracted an unseen presence, another, quote, self, end quote. For when persona or ego disintegrates, nothing is left to assert against spiritual parasites. The OC rituals themselves are a last desperate attempt at armor, one's last redoubt against intrusion to stay in control and somehow rout the trespasser. Quote, obsessional rituals begin as protective reflexes against evil, end quote. Arthur Girdham, The Psychic Dimensions of Mental Health. There are times when the patient himself furnishes the clearest analysis. Quote, I was a very scared little boy. I had a sense I was being manipulated, end quote. This OC's strategy then was to, quote, counter bad with good, offset I am on my own against terrible forces. The rituals must be strong. If you're weak, the forces of evil will triumph. Resist, fight, end quote. Rappaport, 1989, page 55. Set up something meticulous, mechanical, or exhaustive to counteract the encroachment. Say constant washing or counting, repetitive motion, all out exercise. Rooted in time, the sequential process of exercising, walking, running, and all of OC rituals is seen as a defense, a tactic against the timeless grip of the dreaded altered state. The first hint of nameless dread, the first inkling of arousal into ASC prompts the repetitive linear activity, anything to avoid being sucked into the timeless vortex. It's a dodge, a trick, a ruse, a ruse. With the possessed boy Jamie, who feared the all too familiar impingement signaled by chest pains and earaches, a solution was recommended by the priest. He taught the boy a diversionary tactic, lengthy repetitions of the name of Jesus over and over again in this manner through the alphabet. Actually, when it says Jesus, it actually is in all capital letters and it spelled it out. It says lengthy repetitions of the name Jesus, Jesus, over and over again. In this manner, through the alphabet, he was to recite A, B, C, and so on up to J, then A, B, C, and on to E, then A, B, C, and on to S, and so on. It was a, quote, means of blocking the possessing influence, end quote. Martin, 1976, page 253 to 54. Dawn said, in psychology, we say people cut because they don't know how to release feelings. often feel numb and need a release of emotion and feel something, anything, even pain. There's definitely a spiritual side interference. Yeah, that's good, Dawn. Right? What you just said. That does kind of allude to this too. Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. That was good though. Oh, Lord, he got his. I don't want to scream. Hold on. Let me make sure he on mute. Okay. He trying to make him some breakfast, but his class is online today. He got one sit-in class and one online, but online they're required to be online at a certain time every other day. And I see all his classmates. I just want to make sure he was on mute. His class playing. He not in his phone in here with his class playing and his teacher up here, but he not in the kitchen. Boy, I tell you, I ain't gonna snitch on him though. While spirit possession is almost universally scorned by the psychiatric profession, the wording of OCD specialists actually comes awfully close to descriptions of malign invasion. Dr. Rappaport, for one, defines OCD as always involving the quote, persistent intrusive idea, thought, or impulse, end quote, while the ritual itself or the thought, quote, is seen as alien, end quote. Rappaport further notes that, quote, the word obsession comes from the Latin obsedere, to besiege, and indeed, these patients are besieged, truly possessed. These people had a foreign body in their otherwise quite sensible minds, end quote. Rappaport 1989, page 238 and 80. Taking all of this one small step further, Dr. Edith Viora includes compulsive behavior in her checklist for spirit compulsion. I'm sorry, for spirit possession, as does Dr. Goodham, who unapologetically concludes that, quote, compulsive action merges with possession, end quote. Goodham 1982, page 52. The problem with the standard behavioral model is its mindless, unswerving loyalty to SIMAP, anything that cannot be laid to rest in the tangible bed of facts, observable, replicable facts, is loosely assigned to the quote, inner, end quote, life. Yet the story of OCD, especially when told by the sufferers themselves, is all about the alien, the perception of unseen forces which are outside the mind. No, are walkers, runners, exercisers, spinners, washers, repeaters, and the like are not running away from self, but from something that threatens to overtake self, to possess self, to besiege self. Nor is it a coincidence that, as Rappaport observes, the quote, diseased OCD affects some of the most sensitive, emphasis added on sensitive, affect some of the most sensitive people I have met, end quote. Autistic children are also highly sensitive, often amazingly psychic or, quote, open, end quote. Their rigid regimens and repetitive motions spinning, flicking, rocking, twirling, their ticks and twitches also seem defensive. And after defensive, there's an asterisk. And down at the bottom, it says, this whirling at fantastic speeds is sometimes found in spirit possession and poltergeistery. The spinning, somehow a throwing off of centrifugal motion, is found in some multiple cases as well. See Castle and Betchel, 1989, page 323. M. Smith and Padzer, 1980, pages 32 and 37. Go back up. Quote, no, I'm sorry. Go back up to the asterisk. I'll reread the last sentence. Their rigid regimens and repetitive motions, spinning, flicking, rocking, twirling, their ticks and twitches also seem defensive. Victor is an autist studied by Bill Stillman in Heart Savants. Much of his behavior, Stillman thought, suggested, quote, an authentic battle for control with an opposing presence, end quote. Quote, plagued by presences, plagued by, yeah, presences. Plagued by presences, Victor became host to several personalities, end quote. One priest involved in his case, quote, expressed concern over Vic's apparent loss of free will. Is this a case of possession? He asked, end quote. Surely Victor's, quote, difficult to manage multiple personality type behaviors, end quote, were a sign of overshadowing. And indeed, with the loss of free will, anything is possible. MPD, OCD, spirit possession, all branches of the same tree, or should I say, all brother trees in the same forest. We must retain generalists, I'm sorry, we must remain generalists, keeping the overview, the forest in mind. To miss the forest for the trees would be the same as getting lost in our particularistic diagnostic categories, missing the big picture, the flight of the soul touched by darkness. Without the forest in view, our neat little categories only create confusion by overlapping so much. Victor's OCD overlaps with MPD. Yet we have to grasp the grand principle that underlies all this spillover. Autists, after all, tend to present with an array of disorders: MPD, OCD, anxiety, depression, post traumatic stress disorder, even bipolarism. What is the root that connects them all? It all goes back to the prototype of the autist, that, quote, exquisitely sensitive, end quote, human being. And
It's autism.
this is where, no, let me read this next paragraph because where I started highlighting is where it started, but I did mark this. Okay. It all goes back to, yeah, you can probably have to read this whole chapter over, Jeremiah, so you can hear what it's talking about, the autist. What what is the radical, the root that connects them all? It all goes back to the prototype of the autist, that, quote, exquisitely sensitive, end quote, human being. The autist has the psychic door open. Stuff flows in willy-nilly. Quote, gifts of the spirit, end quote, on the other hand, foster tender-hearted souls. Quote, knowingness and innate gentleness, end quote. The open door, on the other hand, can mean exposure, overexposure, hence a terrible vulnerability to sensory extremes like hyperesthesia or ghost seeing. Along the paranormal spectrum are a wealth of talents seen in the artist. Foreknowledge, precognition is second nature. Clairvoyance is just as common, as are telepathy and mind reading. Communing with angels, quote, capacity to perceive all things seen and unseen, end quote. W. Stillman, 2006, page 6. And right here is where we began reading. And we only at like 53 minutes. So maybe I will read a little bit of this and we'll take it up to the hour point. I'll I'll um I'll read just this first portion of it, and we're gonna have to pause right here. Okay. On the downside are serious difficulties like mutism, the suicidal urges, and self harm, like Victor and other autists who sometimes, quote, committed acts of self injury, end quote. The OCD specialist, Dr. Stephen Levenkron, speaks of Lauren's, quote, self mutilating behavior. With over a dozen scars on each arm, Lauren explains her reason for cutting herself. It's a distraction strategy. Quote, what makes you cut yourself? End quote, the doctor asks. Quote, most of the time, all the other stuff, the rituals, the exercises, they use up enough energy so that this doesn't have to happen. End quote. But what do you get from cutting yourself? End quote. Quote, pain. End quote. Quote, what does the pain do for you? End quote. Quote, it brings me back. End quote. Quote, it brings you back from what or where? End quote. Quote, it brings you back from being away from yourself. When I feel like I'm going to lose myself, there is no other way I can explain it. I feel myself drifting away from myself, and the pain brings me back. End quote. Levincron, 1991, page 50. I became more aware of cutting when I found out that two of my neighbors, both young men, were cutters. How rare could this be? I wondered. When I hit the books, the first thing I noticed about cutting and self mutilation is that it knows no bounds, no territory. Cutters inhabit almost every psychiatric domain: OCD, MPD, possession, depression, bipolarism, ASC, Satanism, and even Christian sects that go in for self-flagellation and mortification of the flesh. So here again is a world of overlap, begging for a comprehensive view. And after depression, there is an asterisk, and it says, like the news story about a 14-year-old suicide who had been on depression medication, the Ohio ninth grader was a cutter. And also, if y'all had a chance, or y'all chose to watch through the series Evil, I'm still in the first season. I had to take a break. But if you go through there, in the very first episode, the priest in training, the black dude, when he goes to talk to the lawyer whom he had just found out had been released from her position and her cases, Spoilers. He wanted to bring her on. Spoilers. Yeah, they know. I already said this before, but I just want to remind them of what he said. And Jeremiah said spoiler. So spoiler alert if you haven't started watching it yet, right? Evil is this series where it goes through, and it has a lot of cases that they're solving, supernatural, spiritual cases, cases of demonic possession, all these things. So if you're kind of a little scary, you may not want to watch it, right? But if you get past some of it, it gets into a lot of detail of what we be reading in here. And at the beginning, the priest in training, I forget his name, but he was talking about this overlap from the actual physical and people playing crazy to the people who are actually being overshadowed and have a demonic possession type situation going on. And he said it was this overlap. He said he wasn't sure of, and that's why he needed her, somebody that was that really didn't have any kind of spiritual beliefs or anything. He already had one guy on his team. He needed a real skeptic because he didn't want to get so far off into, oh, this is all supernatural and spiritual, when there could be people that are really pulling the wool over your eyes because of their smarts on how to get over on the system, right? So he talks about that overlap a little bit, and that's what he needed help with. So somebody who was real spiritual like him, who spent his time studying this, but he also needed somebody from the outside looking in that questions everything. Wait a minute, that's a bunch of crap. Let me tell you how this could be reproduced. They playing you. Wait a minute, no, this is not spirit possession. They just want to get off this charge of murder, right? And so some of these things we found that these two, you got a guy that's a high-tech guy that can go through and debunk miracles or certain phenomena and spooky things with his understanding with technology and doing things. And he found a lot of cases to where they were doing that, right? And they was just playing people. There wasn't a haunted house. There wasn't a true spirit possession. It was somebody who had knowledge of technology more than what other people did, and they were really good at their craft. So this guy, he was really good, and he was able to kind of see through the crap and break down some of these things that they thought were true and were really spiritual things, whereas somebody that was a little bit smarter than them was playing pranks and jokes and stuff. So that was good. He talks about that and this overlap of things. So Hannah, you watching the second season now? It's a lot of what we're reading. Yeah, I ain't got to the second season. Shebrew, I'm proud of you. See, she won the second season. Shebrew text me. When she inboxed me, she said, sis, No, it was on it. She responded to one of the comments about it. She said something like, call me a punk, but she had to cut it off in the first season, right? She she had to pray out her house or what, so that's why I kind of explained a little bit about what was happening, right? So but if you're not aware, that's why I gave this big spoiler with the first demonic entity that you encounter while watching Evil. His name is George. Hi, I'm George, right? He was the night terror. So I broke that down. I let you know it was going to be a spoiler, but I was kind of walking you through what happened with this particular night terror and stuff, and how it just kind of goes in, just if you really wanted to see like the process of stuff happening. Look, that's movies. Imagine encountering something like that in real life, right? But I like the way they do it. They can help you with visuals of seeing things if you've never actually been in a situation like that for real. So, but it's really good. Like I said, I'm still in season 1. I'm almost at 2. I'll probably get to watch a little bit more this weekend. But yeah, it's really good. But it's a little scary, so to speak, if you're not used to looking at things like that. And I wanted y'all to watch it for educational purposes only, not to be entertained, but watch what's being done and what they're showing you based on what we've been reading and learning about the spiritual realm. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna pause here at the bottom of this page. Let's see. Let me go back to this sentence. I'm gonna just read this paragraph, the second paragraph. Hold on, wait a minute. I became more aware of cutting when I found out that 2 of my neighbors, both young men, were cutters. How rare could this be? I wondered. When I hit the books, the first thing I noticed about cutting and self mutilation is that it knows no bounds, no territory. Cutters inhabit almost every psychiatric domain: OCD, MPD, possession, depression, bipolarism, ASC, Satanism, and even Christian sects that go in for self flagellation and mortification of the flesh. So here again is a world of overlap begging for a comprehensive view. It was a bit of a shock though when Major David Morehouse began cutting himself. In his stunning and highly recommended book, Psychic Warrior, this decorated officer tells his own story with great candor: how his helmet was hit by a bullet, how the resulting ASCs made him a perfect candidate for the government's secret experiments in remote viewing and psychic espionage. But with his, quote, mind's eye open, end quote, or his third eye, the haunting images were unstoppable and the OBEs uncontrollable. I got the superb phrases, quote, in the ether, end quote, and, quote, touching the darkness, end quote, from David's brilliant testimony. There were nightmares and depression. Worst of all were David's fears of harming himself or others. His hands trembled even thinking about the awful vision he had of killing his entire family. And then there was the cutting. He pleaded with the army psychiatrist, quote, why would I cut myself? End quote. Was it the dark ones in the ether? The doctor hedged, quote, you mustn't let yourself believe that something came out of the darkness and lacerated you. That just can't happen. I believe that the images that come freely to you are messages or symbols from deep in your limbic system. End quote. Morehouse, 1998, page 511 and 272 through 274. Man, let's some type of ghost or demon try to put in the front like old country. So we like, go somewhere with that cringy stuff, nigga. Chill. And quit using. I am so sorry. Say ninja or something. I am so sorry for y'all people of pure heart. We still working on him. Sometimes he got it together, and other times it's like, boy, I'm sending you back to the ghetto. I am so hurt. Let me finish this last paragraph. Page 174. And so it's back to the almighty brain for the answers. And at least according to David's doctor and all her comrades in orthodox psychiatry, the cutters themselves, though, know different. The super multiple Jenny, for instance, knows it is the dark ones, starting with her alter, Wanola, quote, who did things to Jenny, burned her and cut her, but people thought Jenny did it to herself, end quote. Spencer, 1989, page 218. Cutting is not unusual in MPD. One of Cameron W.'s authors, quote, found the X-Acto knife and made 3 deep gashes in my right arm, end quote. West, 1999, page 162. Quote, every time I hurt myself, end quote. Averred Beverly R. Another multiple, quote, quite, it was always very quiet and methodical. I know now it was one of my inside people hurting me, end quote. Susan A. also cut herself. She comments on her changing attitude toward such, quote, self destructive activities, end quote, upon meeting other multiples and seeing, quote, their self inflicted wounds, end quote. Cohen et al., 1991, pages 54 and 130. Yet another multiple, the therapist asked to see her arms. They were covered with grooves. Quote, it looked like a miniature plow field, end quote. Schoenwolf, 1991, page 22. Quote, he would cry out and cut himself with stones, end quote. The book of Mark, chapter 5, verse 5. And this is what we're going to pause at for today, y'all. So we'll finish this up. Like I said, this continues to go on. We read all of this section before when we were answering Kevin's question. But we just want to pause right here and we'll pick this back up Saturday when we come back here and finish reading the rest of it. Because some of it we didn't read. But even when we're answering his question, I just picked a point to stop at. But it's going to continue going on talking about this. Just in case you haven't read ahead, if you haven't listened to the book yet. So let me put mine. Page number here, 80. Gotta go back to 59, 80 to 83. All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out late with me today. Yeah, I know. I was real late today starting. I had a banging headache, and I had to give myself some time to let it wear off a little bit. Yeah, because I was like almost in tears. All right. Yeah, I'm good now. Actually, it's about completely lifted now. I took like 800 milligrams of Motrin. That's how bad it was. You know. Milligrams? Yeah, I had to sit down.
All right, we're gonna put away the ibuprofen. All that's gonna.
No, I haven't had any in a minute. I haven't had a headache, and I don't know how long. But you know, I keep a stash of it.
This is what we can do. When you saw
okay,
me,
Jeremiah, I'm about to start trying to doctor me. I mean, I'm good now. I know, Jeremiah, I'm a juice. Give me a second. I think it's some dehydration, son. I appreciate it. Hold on, let me go ahead and end this, and I'm gonna. Yeah, drink water and rest. Yeah, I gotta
Water's awesome. I'll be drinking that in the morning.
I got a meeting today, but it's on the phone and it's an hour. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna call off this meeting. I really don't want to talk to them today. Like serious, like every Thursday. But yeah, I was like, no, I'm gonna just keep going, just get through it, right? Because I can't be pushing off business meetings. But sometimes I'm just like, just get to the point. But no, it's pretty good. But that's how bad I was feeling. I was like, I'm going to cancel today. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get up and move. I'll be better. I just got to work it off and keep going. And that's normally how I move anyway. I'll just keep pushing through things, you know, until I done push too much. My body say, nope, you going down.
Yep. We are stubborn.
So I'm trying to get better and pay attention along the way so my body doesn't get to that point and just be more aware of my intake of stuff or my lack of intake like water so I don't dehydrate myself, especially because I'm doing more working out and stuff and just all that. Y'all, I'm human. I got some stuff together, but other stuff sister's struggling with. I'm trying to line everything up, make everything balanced in my life. But anyway, y'all, thanks for hanging out. It is Thursday, December the 8th, 2022, day 283 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. Under the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1303. We finished reading the book of Oahspe today, and we started on page 80 when we ended on page 83. And then we hopped over here to the field guide to the spirit world, picking up a little bit more in chapter 7 on page 169, and we paused on page 174. Hold on. Father, we thank you that your music never stops playing. All right, y'all. So with that being said, take some magnesium. Yeah, you know what? I got some what you call it, which I think I already got some mixed up. I probably told y'all about it before. Y'all ever heard of snake juice? I know it sounds crazy, but it's a good mixture of electrolytes. I'm gonna show you.
All right, people. I'm gonna say this now.
You're supposed to be listening to your class. Where's your headphones at? You need to put them on. You need to put them on.
Yeah. It's the last day of the term.
They let y'all out this early?
Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I came back so early.
Anyway, this right here, y'all probably seen this guy. What's his name? Man, he got a real filthy mouth. He on YouTube. He got a real filthy mouth, right? But he's a motivator for people who just seem to lose control. He's like the last resort, right? But his diet is called like the snake diet, but he pretty much teaching you how to get your eating habits under control. But I like him because of this right here, right? And he came up with the name of the snake diet simply because how snakes eat and how they go for periods of time without eating. But anyway, the whole point of saying all that is he created this, and it has calcium, magnesium, and potassium in here, right? And you mix this with about 500 milliliters of water. I got a picture that I normally put it in, and what it does, it helps restore the electrolytes, and it's really, really good. I haven't gotten into this. I was just drinking fresh filtered clean water today. I haven't taken into this, but this is really good. And people sometimes when they fast, when they do water fast, if they're worried about their electrolytes or losing electrolytes or peeing their electrolytes out, that's not going to happen if you do it appropriately. You use spring water and fast or distilled water. Especially if you're trying to heal, you shouldn't take in any electrolytes because your body, if you're water fasting appropriately, your body will create it as it's flushing out toxins and stuff, and you're going to lose a little bit, but not as much as people would think. But for people who think that they're going to lose it, they can use these, right? But your healing benefits won't be as great as they would be if you just didn't give your body anything to process, right? Because your body's using up energy. Whatever intake you get, your body's directing your energy towards your gut. And when you just use fresh spring water or distilled water, your body can then focus on healing and not trying to burn off calories or whatever sources of food that it finds in your stomach, which is why when you water fast, just straight water fast without adding any electrolytes or anything in there, that's why the healing is so great. And it's you get two different results when you water fast with electrolyte water, and you get a totally different outcome if you just fast with no electrolytes. It gives your body a chance to restore and replenish its own sources, right? It's a science to it. I learned about it while watching. I watch a couple different fasters and those who holistically fast people and have done it themselves. There is a difference with water fasting, with straight water, no electrolytes. You get the greatest benefit by doing it that way. And resting, you can't be working out. You have to literally rest that entire time. And if you can keep your eyes closed, and that's what I'm working on. That's the part I ain't got to. Even your vision can be restored, where, because I don't plan on wearing glasses the rest of my life. I really don't. I really want to heal my eyesight. And I noticed that when my prescription gets stronger, it makes my eyes worse. I'm like, yeah, we not doing this, right? So, but when you're water fasting, if you wear glasses, they recommend that you keep the glasses off as much as possible, right? In a perfect scenario, you shouldn't have to go anywhere for whatever period of that time is and rest the entire time and keep your eyes closed as much as possible, because it goes and it heals if you got cataracts, any glaucoma. It helps to heal all of that. And by the time you get fasting, depending on how long you fast, you're going to need to get an updated prescription that's less, what is it? not strong, but a prescription that's weaker than what you previously had, because your eyes will be then healed a little bit. And with a few cycles of those, you can literally restore your eyesight. So that's something I'm working on. Probably take me a little while to do it, simply because it's so many moving pieces in my life, and I just can't sit for days and
If y'all know any
keep my eyes closed.
if y'all know any holistic doctors, please hook them in up, please. Holistic doctors.
Jeremiah, you ain't even look for ones close around here, boy. Listen. Okay, so but yeah, this will definitely help too. So I am, thank you for that. Who was that said that to me? Hold on. Somebody said something about it.
Is another way to get your eating habits down?
Nazarene is saying, yeah, so I am. I'm gonna get some of this. And this will work like almost immediately. But also, when you if you're fasting and you're taking something with electrolytes, because your body will be getting some of the things that it would need, like people that they just can't sit still and they absolutely have to work out, then that's when you would fast taking electrolyte water, because you're going to need to replenish those things that you're putting out. And that whole tiredness phase, you don't go through when you fast with electrolyte water, right? So, but there you have to understand why you're fasting, what you're trying to do, and that'll depend on whether you do straight water or water with electrolytes or stuff in it, right? It's like a whole science to it, but you gotta just learn about your body and what happens to it in different things, right? All right, but that's it, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I love y'all. I see y'all back here Saturday morning at 7:30. We won't be here tomorrow because we're observing Sabbath tomorrow for this moon cycle. Yeah, so that's that. Thank y'all for hanging out. Again, forgive me for my tardiness, but that's me and my body and not paying attention and the headache and all that stuff. And I just had to give myself some time because I could barely move, and because how my head was just banging. So I was like, I have to take something this morning. All right, y'all. That being said, I love y'all. See y'all back here Saturday morning, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace. Bye.
I think they don't eat past like 6, 7, and 8 because